right? So we'll go over a basic schedule and how we can create those, right? Whether it's a window schedule, a door schedule, right? Or, we can do material takeoffs, right? Which we'll talk about as well. Okay. But while we're in our project here, is place yourself a few different windows here, all right? I'm just going to do it as a window schedule, all right, to start out with, because we have windows here. Okay. But if you go to your View tab, and you, under here with Create, you'll see Schedules, and you use the little drop down here. All right, you'll notice that you have the ability to create schedules with quantities. Right, you have a graphical column schedule. So if you were to place columns, all right, into your project, all right, using the structural column tool, all right, this will actually give you a graphical schedule. So it not only will list each column and give you the properties of it, but it'll graphically show you it. All right. You also have material takeoff, which we'll get into as well. And then you also have these schedules in the bottom here, which is a sheet list, note blocks, or a view list. All right. So basically, a sheet list, if with a set of construction documents, basically, that first sheet that's on the front, with your cover sheet, it usually has a list of all the different sheets that are in that whole set. All right. So that basically just lists it out for you. All right. And the same with the views. It will give you a full list of all the views that you have created here in the project browser. All right, and a note block is basically just an annotation tool. So again, if you look at those large construction document sets, as usually there's a block or two that's just straight text that says, gives you all the notes for a project. All right, and that's what you can create here, which you can then click and drag onto one of your sheets afterwards. All right, but we're going to start with the schedule/quantities. All right, so if we click on that, you'll see that it brings up our new schedule. All right, and on the list here is where you're going to select your category that you want to create for your schedule. Right? You'll notice that you have multi-category here as well. Right? Now, I recommend to never actually select the multi-category because it gets very confusing as to what values you can actually schedule when you use a multi-category. All right. Basically, if you're using a multi-category schedule, is the only values that you're going to be able to schedule out, all right, are the ones that the property, all right, is shared with every single object or every single family in your whole model, right? So most of the stuff under the identity data there, right, those are kind of standard across the board for all of your files, all right, and all of your families. Okay, so for the most part, those are going to be the only family or the only parameters that you can schedule out, right? So I always recommend selecting the exact category that you're going for. All right, so if we scroll down here, you can see Windows. Okay, we'll select Windows. You can rename it. Okay, schedule building components, not keys, right? Because again, we haven't touched upon keys, all right, and we're not going to get into them in this class. Okay, and then select the phase, all right, whether or not you're selecting or building in 2 different phases or 3 different phases. Okay, but we'll just select new construction because that's what everything's modeled in. All right, we'll go ahead and hit OK. Okay, it'll bring us up our schedule properties. All right, so this is where we choose all the different properties that our schedule is going to show. Right, under the Fields tab, this is where we're going to tell Revit which parameters we want to show up in our schedule. All right, so you can scroll down here. You can see everything that was placed under that identity data. Right, so assembly code, assembly description, things like that. All right, count for windows is going to be important, so it'll count up the number of windows for that type. So we'll click Add. We'll put count in there. Right, you can do family, and type. All right, any of these if you feel like it. All right, so if I'd go, I won't do family and type, but I might do type down here at the bottom. Right. What might be important as well for either your windows or your doors, right? If you remember when we talked about annotation and about the tags associated with a window and door, whether it's your mark value or your type mark value, right? In this case, it's Windows, so it'll be my type mark value that'll be associated with that window tag. All right, so we'll do the type mark value. Okay. You scroll up here. Right, what else do we need? All right, I'll add height. Alright, I'll do type, and I'll do width. Alright, so a pretty simple schedule here. Right, and once you have them over here, is what you can do is you can adjust them, move them up or down. Alright, basically the topmost field will be the column on the left. all right, and then it'll sort themselves out over to the right. All right, so we'll do something like this. Okay, we'll hit OK. All right, now once you hit OK, all right, it'll create your schedule for you. Right, and for now, that's what we'll do, is we'll just go ahead and hit OK and create the schedule, right, so that we have something to look at. All right, so here's our window schedule. Okay, so you can see the type, it lists them out. All right, the type mark, so again, what shows up on that window tag. All right, count, it'll show you how many of each. All right, height and width. Okay, because those are the values I chose to be shown in our model, all right, and in our schedule. Okay. Now you can see in each one of these, you can select them, right, override what's shown here in the schedule, right, so instead of count, if you wanted to rewrite this to say number, all right, you can, okay, and you can adjust them right here on the schedule itself, right, and you can also do it back in the properties box, which I'll show you as well, all right. What you can also do is, under each one of these, so there's 3x4 type, you can actually drop this down and change that window type right on the fly here in your schedule, right. So I would recommend just being careful when you start to select in these values, all right, because you can accidentally go and make a change here, and it actually changes all your windows physically as well, all right. So don't think just because it's a schedule and it's just showing numbers here that you can't make any changes, because it will actually make your changes here as well, okay. So what I'm actually going to do is, if you go View, all right, I'm going to tile my windows, all right, so you can see all these different windows right next to each other, all right. What's kind of nice as well is if you select one of the values up here in the top, right, you've highlighted that value for the top window in your schedule, right, and your plan view highlights, and it also highlights in your 3D view, right, so if you are making any changes to anything, all right, you can see that, okay, this value on the top here is actually that window that we have selected, all right, so it kind of gives you a little more of a piece of information as to which window you're talking about in each one of these line items. Okay. Now with our schedule, all right, is if we come over here in the instance properties, all right, you'll see fields, filter, sorting, grouping, all right. If you click on the edit on any of these, all right, it'll bring back up that schedule properties, all right. And we'll go through each one of these tabs here and just kind of explain what we have going, all right. So filter, right, you can see that we can actually set filters for our schedule, all right. Now this isn't going to set the filters for any of our 3D views, all right. This is going to be just the schedule that we have here. All right, so under filter, you can see that you can select the values that you have in your schedule, all right, and you can filter things by them. So for instance, you wanted to do filter by type mark, all right, you only want them to equal or does not equal, all right, set any of these values for it, all right, and say you want to filter out type mark equals 10, all right, hit OK. You can see it filters out your results, so it only shows that windows that have a type mark of 10, all right. And so, you know, that's a pretty simple filter, but you can see you can add a number of different filters here, so that you can filter your results to basically show whatever it is that you want it to show, okay. The next tab over, sorting and grouping, right, this is going to tell Revit how you want these to be sorted out, all right. So if you say you want them to sort out by type mark, all right, so have them sort themselves out, so in ascending order with type mark, all right, so that way now it sorts them out. These two are type 10, type 11, all right, and if there's more windows in here, you would see them sorted out by that as well, okay. Now you can set up to 4 different sorting and grouping exercises here, all right, so type mark, you know, if then sort by height, width, and so on, okay. The interesting part to find under this tab here, all right, is you can see grand totals, so at the very bottom here it'll show the grand totals for certain values, right, but this check mark for itemize every instance, right, so the grouping portion of this comes into play where you can see where it says itemize every instance, right, it has it checked, which means that it's going to create a line item for every single one of these items. So we have 3 different windows here, all right, it has a line item for each one of these windows, right. Even though these top 2, so the 3x4 type mark 10, all right, they're the same exact window, okay, it still has a line item for each one. If we uncheck this, all right, and based on what we have here for sorting and grouping, all right, we have type mark. If we hit OK, you can see what it does is it groups now those two windows that are the same type, and it groups them. So we can see we have, okay, there's a type 10 window here, which is 3x4, right? There's actually two of them in the whole project, okay? So generally, again, depending on how the firm works and how, window schedules are, all right, is you might see window schedules like this where you say you have one line item for each window type, so type 10, right? And you can see you have two of these throughout your whole project, okay? And that, again, was done by unchecking that itemize every instance. All right, so if we check that again and hit OK, right, you see it breaks them back out and it sorts them by the type mark, right, but it has a line item for each one of these. Okay, so it comes down to, how you want your schedules to show up visually, right, and you can see as well that, you can add multiple sorting and grouping values here, all right. And again, with the grand totals, all right, you can choose to show grand totals at the bottom. Okay, you see fit to show that. All right. Now on to formatting tab. All right, this is where you can format each one of these columns. So, for instance, if we select type, all right, you can see heading. Now, basically, this is going to be the heading that shows on your schedule. So instead of type, you wanted to say something like window type. All right, something a little different. If you change that, right, you'll see that on your schedule it shows window type. All right, or if you wanted to change the heading, you can just click right in your schedule and change it. All right, but basically it changes the heading on your schedule. Now it doesn't change the actual field or the parameter. Right, this is just visually how that's going to show up on your schedule. Okay, but you can change the heading, right, the orientation of it, the alignment in the actual cell itself. All right. Now things like hidden field, right, you can create columns here and have it as a hidden field. So if for some reason you had one of these values here, right, and you created it and you wanted to be able to sort or filter out results based on a certain field, right, but you don't necessarily want it to show up in your window schedule. All right, so let's say window type, for example, right, you just want to show the type mark, so this is window type 10, this is window type 2, so on and so forth, but you wanted to sort out each of the windows by the window type, right, you wanted to set a filter based on it, right, but you don't necessarily want it to show up when you print this out and show the schedule. All right, you can do a hidden field. So what it actually does is it hides that field visually, all right, but Revit still uses that value to be able to run filters or sort things out with, okay? So that's what that little hidden field does. Okay, now you can see conditional formatting. So this comes down to something similar to like an Excel sheet, right? So if you're similar to conditional formatting with Excel, you can do the same here, right? So format either the text or the background colors based on the values, okay? What you can also do is if you get into different values in here, such as count or height or width, all right? So these values were their actual numbers. As you'll see in the bottom here where it says calculate totals, is if you click that, now when you have calculate totals, all right, you'll see that it goes and it actually calculates that total out on the bottom. So you can see you have a total of 3, all right, windows in your whole project. Okay, and so that's what that calculate totals box is. So for some reason in here you have grand total selected under sorting and grouping, and it's not showing the number up on the bottom. Okay. Under the formatting tab, make sure that that value, whatever it is, all right, that field has that calculate totals box, so that way Revit goes and calculates it out for you. All right. Now, something like height or width, all right, if you select it, you can see you have field format, all right, and this brings you back to that format screen, so you can change what the units are of measure, all right, and the rounding of those. So you can override those again here in the schedule. Not going to change your formatting of the units for your overall project, all right, but what it's going to do is just change it here in this schedule itself, right? So if you want it to show up a little bit differently. Okay. Now the last tab here under appearance is this is graphically how this schedule is going to view on your sheet. All right, so grid lines, you can change the line type, all right, whether or not you want it outlined, all right, change your text around, all right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is visually when you place it onto a sheet, how it's going to print out and look for you. Okay. Now, the last thing here with the schedules that I want to show you that's kind of cool is you can add parameters and calculated values, all right, into your field. So if you don't have, let's say for instance, if you're doing kind of a estimate on this building and you have your windows, right, and you're a construction manager and you want to know, all right, I'm trying to estimate out how much each one of these windows is going to cost to put in, right? One of the things that you're going to need to take into account is the blocking that you need around the perimeter of the window, right? Because you have to factor that into the cost of the window, right, when you're installing it. But if you look through the fields that you have, right, is more than likely you're not going to have a perimeter value for each one of these windows, right? But what you can do is, if you know how to, calculate out at the perimeter of a window, right, it's length plus width times 2, right, is you can actually add a calculated value in here as long as you have the fields selected already to show. So for instance, if I go back to our fields tab and click calculated value, all right, so I'm going to name this one perimeter. Oh, sorry. Okay, perimeter. And you can see you can click on formula or percentage, so you can get the percentage of something. But I'm going to do formula. All right, discipline, we're going to keep this common. All right, type, this is where it's going to come into play as well. So if this is a perimeter, so this is just going to be a length. All right, if for some reason you were calculating an area, all right, make sure that you select this type as area. All right, make sure that you select it as volume. All right, again, it's going to be important that you select the correct one. All right, because when you go and put these values in for your formula, all right, if you go and do a length times a width, for example, and you're calculating an area, all right, if you select the wrong type under here, all right, Revit's going to kick you back with an error saying that you have the wrong units trying to calculate itself out. Okay, but in this case, all right, if we select length for the formula, all right, we're going to write this similar to the way you would write a formula, let's say in a Excel sheet or anything like that. All right, so if you did, okay, we're going to say in parentheses is going to be width, right, plus height, okay, and the parentheses, and then we're going to go times 2, all right, hit OK. And what that's going to do for perimeter now, so OK, you can see that it actually calculates out the perimeter now for each one of these windows, right? And so it's kind of a nice feature that you can have, all right, that you can go and add these calculated values in there. Right now, this perimeter value, it's not going to live anywhere else in your project, right? It's just going to live in this one schedule. All right, but it is, again, something nice that you can go and you can add in a little bit more information for your schedules depending on what you're going with, all right? So again, is, the calculated value, I happen to do perimeter. You can basically do any sort of calculated value that you can come up with for, a calculation for, all right? And now once we have our schedule here, if you went and created a sheet, all right, just for fun, we'll do that. Right, the same way that we place any of our views onto our sheets, all right, with the click and drag. As if in our project browser here, you click and drag your window schedule. All right, you can place it onto your sheet, and then with these arrows, you can drag and adjust how big each one of these columns are. All right, and again, the text size and all of that has to do in your properties under the appearance tab. All right, so all of these values here. Okay. And so that's how you can create your basic schedule. All right, and again, that's your basic quantity schedule. So a window schedule, door schedule, anything like that. Okay. Now the next schedule we're going to run through here is going to be a material takeoff, right? Which is going to be something that would be nice to have if you're doing kind of a takeoff of a building. If you want to figure out, with your walls here, let's say for example with a single wall, what the square footage of, let's say, brick is. So if I change this to something, let's see, exterior, let's say brick on metal stud, all right, we wanted to know how much square feet of brick we have on the job, right? Whether we're doing an estimate for cost or something like that. All right. If we go to schedules and now go to material takeoff, right, is we can see we can do a material takeoff now of our actual materials instead. All right. So if we scroll down, and I'm going to select walls, all right, because we're going to do a material takeoff of our walls here. Hit OK. All right. You'll see that you have, it looks exactly the same as our regular schedule. All right. So under the fields, we can select whatever it is for the walls, right? But what I want you to note is that not only do you have the fields like area and all these, right? But if you scroll down, you'll notice that you have these fields now that are material and then area, right? Or material, comments, and so on, right? So it's important to select whether or not you want the fields here to be from the material itself or the overall wall properties. Okay, and the difference between them is that, so you can see under material, right, you have everything from mark to model to name to URL and all this stuff, right? So if you did material area here, all right, and if you did type, so wall type, all right, under material, you sort it out by material name, okay. All right, maybe select fire rating, something like that, okay. If we hit OK, all right, you'll see that we have a breakdown. All right, in this case, because we have one wall, you're going to get all the same square footages. Okay, but you can see we have the type. All right, so that was our wall type, the exterior brick on metal stud, and it lists out each one of the layers of materials we have in this wall. So there's a brick layer, there's a metal stud layer, and so on. Okay, so this, when you're doing a material takeoff, this is where these filters come into play. So let's say if you just wanted to do a takeoff of the brick, right, you can filter and say material name, I want to equal brick, right, and it'll take off all those other ones for you and sort that out. All right, but the reason why I wanted you to look at the fields that are specifically labeled with material with them, right, so things such as material comments, right, you'll see material comments, but if you scroll up to the top, you'll also see that there's the comments. Okay, so the difference between them is that the fields that have material in front of them, all right, live inside the material properties, all right. The fields that have nothing in front of them and just have the label as comments, okay, are the properties for the wall. So that first comments field there, if you selected this, right, go into your type properties, under identity data, all right, you can see you have type comments, all right, or under the instance properties, if you scroll down, right, you see you have comments there, all right. So if you were to go in here under your fields and see your comments tab, all right, this comments value, this value is going to be driven, all right, you can see they're both blank right now, but this comments value is if you select the wall itself and scroll down, all right, type wall, all right, you can see that value is driven by the properties inside the wall. Okay, so that goes under the regular comments. Now the material comments is if we go into the type properties and go all the way through to the structure, so this brick, right, if we remember we opened up this material browser here, and although we haven't got into the details of all the materials yet, which we'll go over when we do rendering, but if you click under identity, right, there's a whole set of identity data for each one of these materials as well. So you can see here under my identity for your brick, right, there's comments here as well. So if you typed in material, okay, it's there, okay, right, you'll see that's where the comments comes in, okay. And so basically any of the fields when you do a material takeoff that have material in front of them, right, they're going to be driven by the properties of the material itself, okay. So the wall can have whatever properties it needs to, all right, that's separate from the material properties, okay. So it just kind of adds one more layer of information you can put onto your schedules, right, and just to kind of take that into account as well, that even though in this case, because we have one wall, all right, is that the area value, all right, and the material area, all right, if you put these on, all right, they're going to be the same exact thing because we have one wall, all right. It might not be the same, right, depending on how many walls you have, how they're connecting to each other, how they're connecting to floors, things like that, right? Because depending on the connection points, all right, certain layers might be pulled back a bit from the edges, all right, and things of that nature. So you have to remember that Revit tries to be as accurate as possible, especially with numbers, all right, and especially with square footages. So this material area here is basically exactly the area that you have of your wall here, all right, minus your windows, okay? And so that's something to be important of as well, all right? So if we were to delete one of these windows, all right, as you should be able to see that your square footage changes, all right? So Revit actually is accurate enough where it takes into account if you have doors or windows in your wall, all right, that it actually subtracts for the opening, all right, that you have in there. So whether it's a window or a door or something like that, okay? So Revit is extremely accurate in that regard, okay? But again, so that's kind of your second type of material or schedule that you can do within Revit. That's going to be quite useful to you. All right. Now you can use these not only just for doing takeoffs, right, when you're going and, selecting and kind of doing a, cost analysis of your project. But what it can also do is, help you find where different materials are in your project, right? The same way that you can go and select, one of the windows in your window schedule. If you select a line item here in your material takeoff, it'll select and highlight that specific wall that you have highlighted here. All right. So it's something nice to be able to do, again, to get square footage and things like that of materials, if you're trying to do a quantity takeoff of your building.